This committee of the whole will come to order. Clerk will call the roll.
All right, this committee of the whole, Monday, May 18, 2015, we're at 6 p.m. I have Council Capone,
Here.
Council Del Sola,
Here.
Council Florio,
Here.
I got Council
Here.
Council Mahanga,
Here.
I got Council Marquez, Council McKinnon,
Here.
Council Napolitano,
Here.
I got Council Sujata,
Here.
Council Sani,
Here.
and Council Samantha.
Present.
We have 11 members present, we do have a quorum.
11 members present. You have a quorum. Please rise, salute the flag.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If we could please remain standing for a quick moment of silence. We lost two longtime members of the Everett community, well-known families, Mary Rocco and Peter Ravanisi. So if we could please just stand for a moment of silence. Before the clerk reads the only item on the agenda this evening, I would like to wish belated birthday greetings to Councilor McKinnon. I think he's 22, so happy birthday.
Birthday to y'all.
Clerk will read the only item of business on the agenda.
All right, this order up by Council Frank Capone as president. This is the Lower Broadway Urban Renewal Plan.
What's the pleasure?
Administration come up and give us,
Sure. If there's no objection, we'll have Assistant
whatever.
Solicitor Rodriguez before us for our
presentation.
presentation.
Thank you.
Well, if you have an objection, we have to take a vote on it, but
I did say at some point you're going to say no, and I'm not going to be invited up here. Thank you again for the opportunity to come in here and present on this. This is very important. We've done a lot of hard work on this, and again, just by way of brief overview, this is an amendment to a package that has already been approved by this council last year. There were some changes to it, and we did say back then that if there were any major changes, we were happy to come before you and get your affirmation of the plan and the concepts that are contained. I'm going to, with the pleasure, if it's the pleasure of the body, I will hand it off to Tony Souza, who's the Acting Director of Planning and Development. He's done he was the laboring oar on a lot of this work, so he's the best person to give this presentation and to answer any questions you might have. I'll be available if you have any questions later, but with that, I'll hand it off to Tony.
okay, thank you.
Good evening, members of the council.
Good evening.
Tony Sousa, Acting Director of the Department of Planning and Development. I actually put on your desks a copy of the Urban Renewal Plan, same exact copy that I brought to the last meeting, just in case. And this, unfortunately, it's single-sided versus the other one that was double-sided, so I do apologize, but it is the same copy for your reference and benefit. This evening, I would just like to go over essentially this PowerPoint presentation of the Urban Renewal Plan. Likewise, we have the conceptual master plan right in front or right behind councilors, showing that's the most current conceptual master plan, but I'll go through the logistics of how it started, where we are, and where we're moving forward to. But conceptual master plan is there for reference and also in this PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to go through. So as noted, changes to the urban renewal plan. Much has changed since the last time we were here. Last time my old boss was here, I should say. Casino license granted by the Mass Gaming Commission, private purchase of the Monsanto property, private purchase of the MBTA property, addition of city-owned property, Line Street Park, and also a small parking lot on Bow Street was added. And also noted Fancy Nail and Spa, which is business on the corner of Beecham and Broadway. Oh, thank you. I do apologize. So Fancy Nail and Spa, right in this location here, Line Street Park, and also this small parcel, which is a municipal parking lot, was added to the list. Also noted, significant reduction in the estimated budget of the urban renewal plan, and that's in part to all the positive developments that have occurred, private to private changes that have occurred. And as Dave Rodriguez mentioned, we are required any amendments to the urban renewal plan, which the board approved a year ago, would require us to come before. And in essence, this is the updated plan. This slide that I'm showing on the screen above, it's parcels targeted for acquisition back in 2014. And I'm going to do a little before and after 2015, you can see the slight change, which is basically, obviously, the wind site, the, what do you call, the Jerry Barbarian's property, which is in reference to here, right in this vicinity here. And so in 2015, as shown on the screen behind us, is the most current parcels targeted for acquisition. As noted, Line Street, and you see the municipal parking spaces on Bow Street, Fancy Nail and Spa. McDonald's is also on the plan, and for reference, do apologize. We also have the,
If I may, I'm sorry, Tony.
sorry,
Is there a copy of the PowerPoint presentation? Because under our rules, I think, you've got one? I don't have one. Do you all have one? I've got this, I've got this whole thing, but
to be clear, and I apologize, I did not bring a copy of the PowerPoint, but we can get it to you right now.
I think Dave might be in the process of doing that. I don't think that'd be too terribly long, and whatever the will of the body is, if you want to just, we can take a 5-minute recess, and give an opportunity to get those in, because I think it's going to be very difficult to watch the screen and not have something in front of you to make notes on, in case you have questions. It's up to the body. I'd recommend having something in front of you, so you could make notations, and that way, if you have a question about a certain part of the presentation, you could do it. But if you want to keep going, we can do it, but it's up to the body.
Make a motion to have a 5-minute recess.
So we'll take a 5-minute recess to get an opportunity to have that, and then we'll pick it back up.
Sure.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Not a
Tony.
problem. Apologize.
All right, so we'll take a 5-minute recess.
Were you on vacation, Mike?
No.
All right, the committee meeting will resume. We've all got a handout. So, sorry to interrupt you, Tony, so go right ahead.
So, taking from where we left off, or I'd be happy to start again from the beginning.
Well, you're already on the first slide? What? That slide, I think, there is fine. Okay. Councilors, we have a presentation in progress. Tony, I'm listening. You got my full attention, so you feel free to go.
Well and good. So in essence, the changes to the urban renewal plan, 5 changes. Casino license granted by the Mass Gaming Commission, private purchase of Monsanto property, private purchase of the MBTA property, addition of city-owned property, as I mentioned, the Line Street Park, and also the municipal parking lot on Bow Street. In addition, we also added Fancy Nail and Spa, the parcel that's located on the corner of Beecham and Broadway. And lastly, the significant reduction in the estimated budget for the urban renewal plan, which I have a slide detailing that a little bit more for the members here. Basically, a little before and after, parcels targeted for acquisition 2014. And I'm just going to click over. Parcels targeted for acquisition 2015. Now let's just go back. As noted before, you have the wind site. That has changed since 2014. You also have the private property on the upper part. Actually in this location over there. And also noted is the McDonald's, so that was also highlighted on there as well, of course. 2015, you'll see the wind parcel has been removed, the variant property has been taken out, and that's what we are left with. Indeed, it's actually the McDonald's parcel, Fancy Nail and Spa. The other parcels, Line Street Park, the municipal parking lot on Bow Street, as mentioned, and the parcels along this vicinity here as well. Lots to be created for disposition. Again, 2014 versus 2015. Again, similar, as you saw from the previous slides, the changeovers from 14 to 15. Here's a conceptual master plan from 2014. Within the plan, again, this was, as the members know, the Lower Broadway master plan took place before the wind proposal came to fruition, something that you, the council, and city was working on. We had a series of public meetings throughout, vetted process with the residents, actually even, of course, before my time here. But that was the conceptual master plan that we put forth back in 2014, which was showing some type of development where the existing wind site is to be located. And if we fast forward, if you will, to current time today, 2015, you see the wind resort as noted on this plan here and also on the presentation on the PowerPoint. You do see the proposed mixed-use development on the far side of the MBTA. Down below on Beecham Street, you see the proposed public safety complex. Likewise, public safety complex on Thorndike, just identified on here. And it's important to note Thorndike Street parcel right along here, public safety complex over here on Beecham. And important to note, as the members do know, that these are parcels that have to be identified in the urban renewal plan. We do set a boundary here, a certain given geographic area. It by no way, shape, or form does it mean that these parcels, every single parcel in there is to be taken of some nature. We are required as part of the urban renewal plan, as part of the process, to identify parcels that potentially could be taken, and the parcels that you see in orange are those that have been identified. Any changes, likewise, this is why we're come before you again tonight. Any changes to the plan requires the full process of coming before this board, coming before the planning board as it was done, the Everett Redevelopment Authority, and also the CAC, the Citizens Advisory Committee as well. So essentially we're being consistent as was discussed or approved a year ago that any modifications to the plan, and since then progress has been made, as we all know, as said in the beginning, with the developments of the casino site and private-to-private purchases, a great thing to see transpire, requires revision to the URP. The shelf life, the URP meaning the urban renewal plan. Shelf life for such a document is 20 years, and of course, progress moving forward, changes again to the urban renewal plan would require approvals of this board. Here's the planned financial comparison. And basically, the estimated costs you can see with the private-to-private purchase has changed from 2014 to 2015. That is a good thing. That is noted progress. The estimated funding we have to identify, and Russ Burke could further articulate on this, but we have to identify all potential funding sources. And given with the changes of the area, if you will, identified in 2014, the estimated funding has also changed likewise to correspond to that. And net project costs, not actually costs, but in sense, if you will, this is a positive. 51,000 back in for 52,000 back in 2014 to 818,000 in 2015. Looking at next steps, as noted, we are here, or last go around, we were here for the public hearing, and as it was referred to this committee for additional discussion. But we seek City Council public hearing and approval by the mayor. We do require an opinion from the city solicitor. Obtain state approvals. So this will go to Department of Housing and Community Development, as before, for their review and approval, which last go around and even in discussion since then, we've received very positive feedback about this plan, and we don't expect any changes of great substance, perhaps more grammatical or format changes, if you will, to our urban renewal plan. And I do believe finally it's prepare the environmental notification form and file with MEPA. This is standard process for every urban renewal plan, and therefore, when ready, if approved by the council, proceed with approval by mayor, city solicitor opinion, get our state approvals, and file an ENF with MEPA. So in conclusion, this is just a snapshot of this PowerPoint, a snapshot of essentially what is detailed in the URP, and be happy to answer any questions. Dave Rodriguez is also here, and Russ Burke, our consultant from the BSC Group, is also present as well.
Thank you very much. The first individual I have is Council Mangan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tony, just a couple of these things that popped up from the old one to the new one. Down where the MBTA land was, now there's a, said land swap, and now it's potential mixed-use development. Any idea what do we have any ideas what we're gonna be? That orange piece there?
We're looking at that orange piece?
Yeah, it says
right
land
over here, right?
swap originally, now it says future development.
So, and please feel free to chime in. That parcel there was purchased by the Wynn folks for development there, sort of additional office space, if you will. So that's the status of that parcel.
Does Wynn own that?
Yes, they currently do.
Okay. So they would be looking to develop that then?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay, I didn't know if it was the city or whatever, or like I said, that's why I was kind of confused, whatever, because I saw some of these other things in orange that were, that they were city, city things down below, but that one particular, so
Yeah.
that's Wynn. So they're actually gonna knock down that building or whatever, or?
As soon as they possibly can.
Oh, okay, I thought it was, I misunderstood. I thought when I took it, I thought it was just taking some land so they could bypass, so I didn't realize. Okay.
I might add, at the time when, last year when we were doing this,
Yeah, if you could please speak to the microphone, that way people at home.
Russ Burke with the BSC Group.
There's a building back
A year ago, we were still uncertain what the arrangement between the WIN and the MBTA was going to be. And at the time, there was some discussion that they may be looking to do some swapping of land, with WIN purchasing the private land to the north of that. And this plan now represents the actual land holdings that WIN does have. And the plan just shows what a potential way that WIN might develop that property,
Okay.
but it's in private hands now.
Okay, and then, also too, this particular, pardon my, this park right here, which is new, I mean, it looks like it's a small little thing, but it says for parking or something, or, I'm just curious why that would, that small little area for parking, and what would it, what is,
So that small parcel, and just for everyone's benefit, public's benefit, is this little piece here also on the overhead as well. It is a small parcel. It's municipal owned, and basically we highlighted that sort of in the, if you think about to kind of help kind of control the destiny there. If there was a larger scale development of potential interest over there, that, and if they needed to, square the parcel or add on to the parcel, that could potentially be a piece that could benefit a future development there. We just decided to be essentially proactive, if you will, to identify our own municipal parcels in the event of kind of helping control our destiny. So in this process, we added that, and also the Lion Street Park as the other municipal lot in there for, we'd like to think, for the benefit of future development and allowing for the city to have more control over that.
thank you. And then finally, Mr. President, through you, Tony, in that area, I know Councilman Napolitano mentioned, I believe, last week at the meeting, but it was brought up in the original plan. Down in behind there, like Cortlandt Street in that area, farther down towards before the Rotary, in that whole area down there, excuse me, in that whole area down there, they were talking about possibly making it like a park or something like that, so we wouldn't, are we still planning on doing that? Or something, because they could possibly lose Lion Street Playground?
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. We're not going to box ourselves into any particular one solution for the replacement of Lion Street Park. We're looking at a variety of different solutions to having that. What we do know now is that Lion Street Park is underutilized. It's not to its highest and best use as it is right now. That there are some challenges with the site in terms of parking and usage, and is it a good playground? It's right next to a power plant. It's right next to a scrapyard. These things, it makes it very challenging in terms of a park. If we can better serve the public by replacing that park with something else, we're certainly going to explore that, and we're going to engage the public in where we should replace that park. And it's the mayor's full intention to do so that people have, the mayor's, one of the priorities that he's had since he took office was the expansion of green space in the city. He doesn't want to take any away. To do that, he understands that there's a lack of green space here, specifically because of our population density, and it's important to maintain green space to the highest amount that we can. I do want to note, in addition to Tony's comments, that this is a conceptual plan in its entirety. That this is not a hard and fast course of action. Parcels that are identified for acquisition or disposition, it doesn't mean that they have to be acquired or disposed of. This is a concept. This is a plan that we could execute through the redevelopment authority in order to continue the economic revitalization that's in there. The funding, this is not a request for funds. This is not a budget to expend funds. This is not an appropriation piece. This is just a concept of how it could get paid for in the market or otherwise. I do want to note that there are 0 residential properties that were identified either for acquisition or disposition inside the plan, and that's been consistent with our direction from the mayor and other members of the administration that they wanted to go forward with. These are either these are some businesses that have either exceeded their use or their useful life, or abandoned buildings or municipal property.
All right, thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Del Solo.
Can you explain proposed public safety complex, what that actually is?
Sure.
Yeah.
From the beginning of the process, in speaking with Wynn, we've kind of always envisioned having either a public safety substation, a police substation, or fire substation down in that area. What this is the ground level of where we could possibly put it. So we want to be able to have the option, in the real estate option, to put something there. We're still exploring all options in terms of the greater capital improvement plan. But these have been identified as parcels where it could possibly go down there.
Okay, and the other question was the development that Councilor Megan was just talking about. Is that where New England Bolt is right now? Behind the backyard?
Yeah, it's 9 Charlton Street. It's been condoed out for different purposes and different uses. There were some tenants who have been successfully relocated. It was purchased by Wynn shortly after receiving the unconditional license and paying their license fee. That's currently under the ownership of Wynn. And from our understanding and our knowledge from meeting with them, it's planned to be to supplement the back of the house operations that are there, executive offices, some horticultural equipment being staffed there, lawnmower, stuff like that.
Okay.
The site itself, the Wynn site proper is very challenging in terms of size and in the way that it's oriented. So they bought this land to supplement their space over there.
Okay, and the last comment will be, I know we said this 1,000 times, and we got the same answer 1,000 times. There's no houses being taken, eminent domain, correct?
For the thousandth and one, you raise a very important point, and one that I certainly want to address. Everybody, eminent domain is always the elephant in the room when talking about urban renewal planning. It is a means of last resort. We want the market to govern. We want the market to control. We want the city to get into the game. We want them to be part of the market. Eminent domain is a means of last resort. When there are no other options left, there is no further discussion to be had, there is no other negotiation that could possibly be had, then eminent domain is discussed. And to answer your question directly, no, there are no residences that are included for any acquisition to be bought or sold by the city, certainly not by eminent domain.
Okay, thank you.
Council Marchese.
Anthony, Mr. Souza, Mr. Rodriguez, we spoke just a little while ago, and I know we're going to look to remove the park and put it elsewhere. The population, obviously from the Charleston Chew and the condos that were built there may be an increase in population down there, and down the road, even though they're not eminent domain, they may package properties, identify and build more condos on both sides. The only thing that seems that's lacking on it, we don't have any amenities for the people. There's like no retail, no stores for the people. Most of the people down there will come out, get in front of the bus stop, and go home. There's not, come back and forth. It's not really a place for them to stop off and, get coffee, want beer and wine, something for the house, anything.
Sure.
I mean, we proposing places that we could actually provide services for the people down there, because you'll be creating a whole new neighborhood, which probably won't be the neighborhood of old with children and everything. You'll probably see a more mature group of tenants down there, who will need, there'll be obviously the casino, but those also is gonna need restaurants, and is gonna need services to provide for them. I mean, do we allow anything in that general area down there for that?
Well, what you're speaking about, and Tony can expand on this a little bit, is what you're saying is exactly what we heard when we were developing the Lower Broadway master plan. And it's exactly what's included within the plan, and when we took the further step of rezoning that area, we allowed those uses in that area so that we could, over time, develop those sorts of things. We didn't, this is and Russ can talk about the scope of the plan as compared to other plans that have been executed throughout the Commonwealth. This is not something, the city's certainly not looking to get too much into the game. Yeah. We want to get into the game so that we can control our own destiny down in that area. But what you're saying is exactly what we saw, exactly what we heard from residents and business owners as part of the development of the Lower Broadway master plan. It's one that we're looking forward to executing as part of the process. First came the master plan, second came the rezoning, now comes the urban renewal planning when we're talking about specific parcels. So what you're saying is consistent with those efforts.
It'll be interesting, because it'll be an interesting part of the city. It will evolve over time.
Yes. And if I may, excellent question, excellent points. I wish I actually brought the Lower Broadway zoning map for everyone's benefit, but just kind of doing this off the top here. In this vicinity, we do allow for mixed-use development in this area here. Trying to support residential development on this side here, this is identified. It was part of, as Dave Rodriguez made mention, of the master plan process. And so then the new zoning does support mixed-use development, commerce, and employment thinking of industry and so on. We did not leave that out. We've set an employment, we call these sub-districts, an employment area in this vicinity. Your commercial, continuation of the commercial that's here, but also, again, to support all the uses that are there today, including the ability to support mixed use in this vicinity and continue to support residential in this area. And we try in the zoning to give flexibility and to try to support good development projects, and to encourage the existing owners that they feel comfortable also enhancing or growing their parcel, their properties, if you will.
I mean, that would be a great area to have commercial, residential on top of each other coming down that path, where people could, get off the bus and walk to someplace. I mean, you have, other than, I think there's two places, maybe there's Teresa's Market and there's the gas station, which won't be there, that you can get bread and milk.
Yep.
In a small little,
I totally
Place to
agree.
call it.
Totally agree.
thank you very much.
Counselor, you speak, just to, we're off track already, so we might as well continue with it. You're speaking of the greater vision for the entire city, in that we're taking a holistic approach. We're looking at the whole city as it comes to the development of these things. And when you speak about getting off the bus, we don't want them to just get off the bus. We want them to be able to get off bus rapid transit or a train or something else that we're able to develop and work with. And Tony's office is doing an enormous, they're very busy, and I ask them to do 1 million different things every day, and they come through every time. Link the bike path, BRT, Silver Line access, commuter rail access, anything that we can possibly do to enhance those sort of uses, because with transportation comes economic development. And we know this, we're working towards this from the city at large. And if you look at where we're at now with the lower Broadway region of the city, this is where we'll be at next year with the commercial triangle. And we're going to be doing a citywide master planning process. We're going to be doing a citywide rezoning process. And we will be using every tool at our disposal to get us where we want to go, which is what you've described. In terms of this new economic development, these high uses, these good tax bases, these good uses, and these good residences for people to come in and take advantage of our location and our proximity to Boston.
Thank you very much.
Councilor Napolitano.
Thank you. All right, I won't ask about the tot lot, though I did speak with several residents down there, and they are hoping, because of the isolation aspect of the residences down there, and we're not taking them, so we're assuming there's still going to be large numbers of families there, that there is some type of top lot within the neighborhood. So this way here, they're not forced to have to go up to the Rotary as they do just to attend school. So I would hope that that's considered as we continue to progress it. But my question has to do with the proposed commuter rail stop. I know the governor has made no secrets that he's reevaluating and looking at the MBTA, especially given the problems that they had this past winter. Why weren't they able to sustain service when they should have been able to? So has there been discussions? I mean, where does the current governor sit on the idea of putting a proposed commuter rail stop here? Give us some more detail on that,
The governor
please.
is very well aware of, and the mayor has met with the governor and with other mayors and expressed this point to him, that Everett is currently the only city, as part of the Metro Mayors Coalition, that is not serviced by light or heavy rail for passengers. We only have buses. If you go to any other city, and you could think of a lot of cities that either touch or are as part of the MBTA system, you get pretty far out. The governor's aware of this point, and before the previous administration left office, we were authorized in working with Jay Monty and Tony's office to do an Everett Transit study. What do we have? What do we need? How do we get it? And execute that so that they're part of that process, working with Mass DOT, Everett, the City of Everett, Department of Planning and Development, and the Mayor's Office, working with MassDOT to do that transit study. What do we need? What do we have? We don't know what the answers to those questions are. If it's a commuter rail stop, we're going to aggressively target getting a commuter rail stop. If it's BRT, which is the Silver Line, let's go after the Silver Line. We need to get what works. So we're well aware of how we need to get there, and we need to do that study first. That's being funded fully by the state. I think they've retained their consultant now, and they're going to be doing their kickoff meeting sometime in the next couple months.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Hanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to our invited guests. I'm looking at the chart. I'm looking at G1 and G2, and I'm trying to understand. I see the red striped lots are possible to be acquired.
For which slide, Counselor?
G1, the first one.
G1 for 2014 or 2015?
2014.
Okay.
Okay. And now that you said G14, turn over to G14,
So
and you'll notice that there a number of the red lines have disappeared. Does that mean that the lots have been acquired?
Speaking specifically to the lots that have been acquired, you're looking now at G1, the parcels targeted for acquisition in 2014. You will see the former Monsanto site. It has changed hands. Wynn, it's now currently under the ownership of Wynn, as has 9 Charlton Street, which is now also currently under the, we feel that the economic development, we don't need to get into the game when it comes to those parcels. We're confident that they'll be developed in accordance with the local zoning. What? And the MBTA as well, which has been purchased and is now currently in escrow, just to make that clear. And so if you go to look, we don't need to have those as part of the plan anymore, so we remove them.
So then, the same thing would apply for the H1 lots created for disposition?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. And then I have one other question, and that is on page, I guess there's no page number, but planned financial comparison, estimated costs and estimated funding and net project costs. I wonder if you could just talk to us a little bit about that, what those figures mean. I know that this is supposed to be a proposed wish for kind of a thing, and I'm wondering what is the money is the same kind of a thing.
I'm going to defer to Russ Burke, who's
Okay,
worked
sure.
on these plans. He put this, this financial comparison together, so he's the best to be able to articulate that. Russ.
Thank you. This goes back to your earlier questions about maps G1 and H1 in 2014 and 2015. The major driver in the reduction of both the estimated cost as well as the required funding is really related to the elimination of those acquisitions and dispositions, because we were working with rather large numbers on those properties. And so with the removal of those properties, the amount of estimated cost is more than 50% less than what it was originally. And in the full plan that you do have, there is a financial plan that shows the sources and the uses of funds. So we go down line item by line item, indicating what the current costs are now in terms of the potential acquisitions as well as what the funding sources are. And I do you want me, I do have a one-page summary to share with the council that goes through the financial plan. So this is sort of the guts of where these numbers came from. And as David mentioned, like the plan itself, this is an estimate, our best estimate as to what we think the costs are going to be and where the most likely funding sources are. Over time, this is subject to change as looking out 20 years from now, it's hard to project what something may cost or what we have to do in those times. But this is our best estimate and projection as to what the cost would be.
Okay. I'm pretty sure I understand what the estimated costs are, but what I really want to know is about the estimated funding, and where does that come from?
Well, the funding itself comes from a variety of sources. And in the second page, the back side of that page, the funding sources are a variety of grants, sales of some of the property that's being acquired. When property is acquired, the intention is that it would be disposed of, and it would be disposed of for, hopefully fair market value. So we estimate that approximately $6 million would be the revenue realized from the sale of properties. We estimate that about $5 million in Mass Works grants for infrastructure improvements, EPA and EDA money, $1 million over the 20-year period from the Community Development Block Grant funding, funding from Mass Development, $500,000 over the 20-year period of costs from the City of Everett, and Chapter 90, $4 million. What we also did not touch on that is still a possibility is some of the revenue derived from the impact fees that are paid by the casino, but we did not program any of that money into this plan as of yet. But that is funding that's also potentially available.
I'm not seeing anything that comes up to $78 million. I see 29 million, and
And that's a good thing, because that's the amount of money that's being saved. The $78 million was what the plan showed a year ago when we were envisioning that we had to purchase the Monsanto property, as well as the Charlton Street property, as well as the property from the MBTA. So those were the major differences, which brought the total cost from these $78 million down to $29 million.
okay, thank you.
Counsel McKinnon.
Let's see, I have a quick question on this. This is all the projected ones that we haven't acquired yet, or what is this again?
The properties that are shown on here are properties that were shown on the slide as potential acquisition properties. And these values are based on what was performed was called a windshield or a limited appraisal. Before these properties can be purchased, the state will require that two appraisals be done to determine fair market value if and when the city, through the redevelopment authority, were to acquire these properties. Over time, what the state has required for urban renewal plans, given that appraisals have a limited shelf life, they don't last forever, and they can be expensive in the preparation of the plan. So they do allow for what's called a limited or a windshield appraisal, which we had performed on these properties. And so the values that are shown on this plan.
What's the time frame for that?
For the
For the windshield appraisal? How long does it last on something like this? I mean, could these figures go up or down?
Yeah, I mean,
these are just estimates,
some of
correct?
these values were done about 6 months, maybe a little more, closer to a year ago. And as you know, the market changes. We've seen the past 5 years go down and go up. So it's really, the reason the state requires us to do that, or requires a community to do that, is so that we're not pulling numbers out of thin air, that they're based on some credible, reliable methodology. And it's, at a point in time, it's our best estimate. But as you pointed out, these numbers can change for the better or for the worse as the plan goes forward.
Okay.
And the state recognizes that, but it's our best faith effort at this point in establishing what the amount might be.
Okay. And then maybe you can answer this, Mr. Rodriguez. Do you anticipate any further acquisitions that could possibly pop up further in the process?
Outside of the plan?
Yes.
And
And if you do, I mean,
we
it's your...
come back before you guys.
Okay, so you're definitely coming back before us.
Well,
that
if
happens.
there are more parcels targeted for acquisition or disposition, then yes. If there's a major amendment to the plan, we're required to come back like we are now, and get your approval or your affirmation of the plan. It's very important to kind of hopscotch off what Russ was talking about. It's very, very important to recognize that this is a concept. This is not a funding plan. This is not a budget that we're asking for you to
I want the
tonight.
viewing audience to know that.
Yeah, of course,
That's
and
why.
that's why I've said it a couple times, and I want to just make sure that it's perfectly clear that we're not asking the city council for a dime tonight
Okay.
to do any of this. We're required as part of the process to say, okay, if you were to fully execute the plan, how do you pay for it? How could you possibly pay for it? What are the options that you have? And Russ has done a masterful job in putting something together that could happen. It very well could, in theory. Doesn't mean that nothing's written in stone, and nothing's for certain when it comes to how things are funded, or if they're even need to be funded at all.
Okay. And you're required by the plan to actually come back before us if there's any additional acquisitions that need to be done, correct?
That is correct, and the reason, we've had this problem with the state in doing other plans. We would love to call these potential acquisitions, because in essence, that's what they are. We're not certain if they're going to be, but any property that there's a possibility that there might be an acquisition. And an acquisition could simply be through a negotiation. What the urban renewal plan does, it allows the redevelopment authority to act as a private party. They could, without having to go through the public bidding process, they could knock on somebody's door if their property is identified here and say, hey, are you interested?
As a private entity, they can
Yes,
do
are
that.
you interested in selling? Can we talk? Right now, the city can't do that. It would have to do an RFP and a bidding
Yeah.
process. And as you know, it's awkward,
Understand.
and it doesn't oftentimes result in the desired goal that you're shooting for. So, in any event, what we
put it
we
nice,
do
I
is try to be reasonable and put properties in as acquisitions with the mind that we don't want to have to come back if something comes up and we want to acquire. But to your point, if a property is not identified in this plan that says, jeepers, we would really like to have this that was, through events unforeseen,
You
it
come
would
back
require
before
an
us.
amendment
Okay.
to the plan, and we have to go through the same process, and would be in front of this body before that would be allowed under the state law.
Okay. Now,
We are very, very confident that the market's going to do the majority of the heavy lifting when it comes to revitalization of Lower Broadway. We've already seen the lion's share of that done.
it's on the upscale instead of the low.
Yeah, what we want to do is we want to get in the game. We want the city to be part of that, and we want to be on equal footing with developers so that we can control our own destiny and not be subject to restrictions of the RFP process,
Yeah.
which can be restrictive and can also cost the taxpayers money.
That's leading me into my next question, because you mentioned Line Street Park, and it's kind of like blighted, but we had, I think we sunk like almost $1 million, maybe $1.5 million into that park at one time. I believe it's not under this administration, it was under a past administration, maybe?
I can do some research into whether that was done.
Yeah.
But
Because,
$1 million over 10 years or 12 years is not, $1 million is always a lot of money.
Uh-huh.
But when it comes to a maintenance fee over that time, it is a blighted park.
Oh,
It's-
sure.
It's not a maybe. It's underutilized. It's undervalued.
Where is that park going to be located? Is it going to be located down in that area?
We don't
or-
know yet. We're
Okay.
gonna engage the public on that, and we're not gonna replace a park for the sake of replacing a park, and we're not gonna have a park for the sake of having a park. We want something that's gonna be used by the public in the best possible way, something that reflects the use. And
I
the-
think
the-
every
the
park right
community
now
does.
is used. It's
This park
utilized.
primarily is used for overflow.
Yep.
It's not, believe me, this is not a first choice park for anybody. You're heavily involved with local sports teams and local youth sports. This certainly is not a park that's the first choice of anybody. So let's try to fix that. Let's try to get a best value and give something back.
Well, that's what I'm looking for. I mean, if we already dumped $1.5 million into it, I think, and then, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's kind of sort of right around the ballpark figures there, but that's over a period of years, and it's,
Yeah, I don't know the exact figure. We can certainly get that information about the maintenance of that.
Now,
park.
will it
We're
be
doing that.
replaced?
We have to do that research anyway.
Yeah.
So we're happy to share that once.
Will it be replaced that sort of in that ballpark area?
Like
or-
I said, we don't know yet.
Okay.
We don't know yet. We're gonna, to replace the same park in the same location might not provide us with the highest value.
Sure.
To replace a similar park of similar size with better amenities, with more modern amenities in a different location could very well provide high value to that, and that's something the mayor's committed to doing in a way. And again, we discussed this at the council meeting last week. It should not be discounted, the open space that's gonna be part of the WIN project.
Yeah, I wasn't at that meeting. I was in Washington
Yeah,
DC
no,
with my
that's
son,
fine.
so.
That's why I'm happy to
Yeah.
reiterate some of the things we discussed. That's one of the key points that we wanted to make during the host community negotiation process was the activation of that part of the city, the waterfront park, that will be able to be used without setting foot in a casino, without setting foot near a hotel, or any of the other amenities on there. We wanted the public to be able to use that waterfront park like it's a park.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things we're going to be able to replace. A lot of the things that we hear from residences down there, they're looking for a place to walk their dogs. They're looking for a place to go on a nice walk throughout all 4 seasons, and they're looking to provide recreational activities down there that they haven't had in generations. So we were looking to activate that. That park is going to be part of a greater park system. Like I said, we're not viewing any of these items in a vacuum. We want to make sure that it all works together, so that when you activate the waterfront park as part of the WIN project and it crosses under the tracks, connects with the DCR park, connects to another park, so all of a sudden we have a pretty impressive park system.
Sure.
That's activated the waterfront for the first time in a couple generations.
All right. I just wanted to point that out, because I know that we had deliberated over it back and forth when it was coming up on budget time about that park. So
Sure.
I believe it was 1.5, but if you can get the figures, that would be great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Council Sachetta.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've attended a number of these urban renewal meetings you had over the past 3 or 4 years. And this was before we had the redevelopment authority, and before we had the wind people with the hotel and so on and so forth. And it's a great plan to do what we have to do there. And I think my question's been answered by a number of people that have asked questions. The fact of the matter is, when in fact we put these prices out today, a number of them were in the early stages, like Beecham Street, which we're gonna get $3,500,000 to repair and so on. But a lot of it's come about because of the wind development. I just want people to know that anything that's gonna come before us, if we approve this today, favorably approve it, that doesn't mean that you people are gonna expend any money at all. It's gonna come from what we've already sourced and whatever wind is put into it. Anything you people come before us as a urban development, the development plan, the urban renewal development, if they come to us for any money, that has to come before us before they spend a dime. And I want the people of Everett to know that. You can't spend a dime without coming to us before we approve it. Is that correct?
That's correct. This is not an appropriations bill. This is not a spending bill.
That's right.
If the redevelopment authority wants to, the redevelopment authority can intake funds from other sources. But if we want to spend any money, any of the cities, the taxpayers' money through the redevelopment authority executing this plan, it's got to come before this body for an appropriation.
That's what I wanted the people to know. Thank you very much.
Council Simonelli.
Thank you, President. Mr. Rodriguez. I'm a little confused here. The residential property down there, right, has that, I know you had meetings down there before on it, and was there ever a poll taken that the people down there really approve this or don't approve this? I mean, I think it's up to them what's going down on their property. I mean, will the quality of life change because of the casino coming in, or would it be better for them people? Right? You know what I'm saying?
I don't.
No?
Yeah, I don't know if there was a question or.
Well, the question is the quality of life gonna be any better down there now with this casino coming down there? And also, is the people down there, are they mostly for it, or are they just gonna get run out of the city?
Well, first of all, it's very, no one's going to get run out of the city.
Well, I know it won't get run up, but they'll get sold out or whatever they want.
Only if they sell.
That's right. But
Only
I
if they
mean-
sell. And the mayor said it a couple times, and I've said it a couple times.
I understand,
We're
I'm just saying.
discussing the
I'm just
redevelopment authority. We want everybody to make money on their property.
Well,
We want the market.
did you ever get any feedback on the people down there about what's going on?
As
I
part,
mean,
yeah.
the quality of life?
CAC.
As part of the
Are
process.
they happy with it?
As part of this process, the state requires a fairly robust involvement of citizens and stakeholders. And so, at the outset, we formulated a citizen advisory committee that was comprised of area people and people from down the line. And in terms of quality of life, I mean, that's an open-ended question, and I'm not going to.
I can't see it get any better, that's for sure.
Well, it's a function with the casino. You're correct. It's creating a market dynamic that's going to be in play. At our last meeting, we had a very robust discussion about what's happening in the marketplace. Are people going to be staying? Are people going to be selling? What's going to be happening there? And it's really a function of what the individual property owners want to do. I think there are some property owners who think it's time to sell, and there are others that feel that they want to stay. And as David pointed out, the intention of this plan was not to have this plan be the reason anybody's going to be displaced from their residence. That being said, there is going to be some temptation if somebody knocks on their door and says, have a business that's related to the casino, and I'm going to pay you a number that makes their eyes wide open. That may very well happen, and there may be some people who decide that they want to stay. That's their neighborhood, and so what you're asking is a very good question, and I don't know what the final answer is, but this has not been done in secrecy. We have reached out to these
Right.
people, to the property owners. They are aware of the plan, and the plan is attempting to allow people to be masters of their own fate with respect to their properties.
Yeah, and just to kind of expand on that, and just to answer the underlying question, the reason that we engage in the master plan, the reason that we rezone the area, the reason that we're engaging in the urban renewal planning is to increase the quality of life for folks in this area and for the city at large. We would never do anything that we would think would decrease the quality of life. And on June 22nd, 2013, nearly 90% of the people in the city who voted in the referendum supported the project, and they thought that it would increase the quality of life citywide. So that's an important thing. You asked me if we ran a poll. We didn't of the area.
Down
We
that
engaged in a
area?
very robust community engagement process through Russ, through the urban renewal planning, through the CAC. I think there was 30 members as part of the community advisory committee. So we've done everything that we could, and we are committed to increasing the quality of life in this region and throughout the city, and this is why we're doing it.
One more question, quick question. Also, the impact of the traffic down there. Now with the new, the condos they just built, on the casino side, I mean, you're gonna have them, it's all the parking's gonna be so intense in down here from people getting out of them apartment buildings or condos, whatever they are that built down there. And with the people living down there, it's, I don't know,
Well-
it's gonna be a mess. I can't see it, any way is this gonna make the traffic any better?
Well, Counselor, just to adjust, and again, we're off the reservation, so let's run with it. The parking is something that we're paying very close attention to, not just through the operation of the facility, but through the construction of the facility. We understand that's gonna be a very important point. Tony's office, again, everything always seems to come down to Tony's office, and everything kind of falls in his office's lap. He's taking a look at the parking and strategies that we can address in order to accommodate residential parking in that neighborhood, whether it be different things that we can do, restructuring of parking, realignment of parking, 24-hour residential parking, everything's on the table, and to protect the residents down there. In terms of traffic, that has been the single hottest topic when it came to this project since we started it 30 months ago. And we have spent untold amounts of hours thinking about traffic, talking about traffic, how to improve traffic. We are convinced, and we are working with them hand in hand, in what we're viewing as a public-private partnership, to not only mitigate the traffic that's caused by the project and through the ancillary developments, but to improve traffic down there. We all know that there's traffic down there now. How do we fix it, not just to accommodate the traffic, but make it better? So we're committed to doing that, and that talks to the larger issue of the Everett Transit Study. How do we get people out of their cars and onto either light rail or heavy rail or BRT? How do we get them to use their bikes in the summertime? How do we do these things from a larger perspective? So we're taking a look at all that, and we're really leaving no stone unturned when it comes to addressing those issues.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say that, if you say it's okay, if the people say it's okay down there, then, good luck, God bless them. Thank you.
Counselor DeFlorio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, Dave. Dave, in regards to Dexter Street and Bow Street, city-owned. It says it's city-owned on this chart.
Dexter and Bow? That's the parking lot?
Is that the island? I'm
No,
not.
that's the parking lot. That's across, that connects the park through the skinny alleyway to go to the park on Dexter, to Line Street Park.
Oh, okay.
I think,
So is
on the
that-
larger picture, I think Tony can be able to point it out.
I was just trying to picture it, and I've been down there with all my children, believe me, with
Yeah,
baseball.
that's it right there. Yeah. The island that you're referring to is not included.
That's not included,
Yeah.
okay.
And I don't think we'd have to designate that I don't think that's a formal park. That's more an island that we'd be able to do with if we needed to do roadway improvements.
Right,
widening
okay,
our
so that's not gonna affect any residents, that's just the alleyway to go to the park, so it's not, okay. The other question is, what does this mean, city transfer for $1? I'm not understanding that.
You would give, the municipal land that's included within there would be given to the redevelopment authority by the city council to the ERA for $1. It's just a land transfer there. So the ERA as an entity of the city would be able to execute the plan, and we would give them, we'd give that organization, that entity, the land for $1 for them to either dispose of, get them, sell, do with as they, or redevelop.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Hanlon. Counselor Hanlon, do you still have a question? Okay, wonderful. Are there any other questions from the floor?
Excuse with the customary
If there aren't
thanks.
any, I always reserve to the very end. I let the members speak first. So I do have a couple of questions that I'd like to have addressed. As you know, this is the majority of this, the lion's share of this is in Ward 1, which is where I represent. So it's very near and dear to my heart. I understand the spirit of the plan. I think that it's a good plan. I do have a couple of concerns I just want to address. The first thing is I want to echo the sentiments about the green space, and I'm glad to hear that the administration's position is to, obviously provide some additional green space somewhere, try to keep it as beneficially located where folks are so they can enjoy it to maximum benefit. And I also am happy that there'll be input from the neighborhood in order to access where that should be. On this sheet, the 62, 63, that was just passed out, the expenses and the acquisitions, I'm looking on page 63, it's table 13, talking about the funding sources. We've got the city of Everett for $500,000, and then we have bonds of $1 million. That's all city shoulder, right?
The $500,000, again, and it's important to point out that this is conceptual, that it would be a $500,000 appropriation from the city to the ERA to execute the plan. The ERA can bond money, but they have to have credit in order to do that.
Right.
So structurally, at present, they can't. They don't have any. They don't have any assets. They don't have any credit.
Correct.
So they can't bond anything at present, but they would be able to in the future, in the event that they acquire any property. So the ERA can bond on their own. That would not be a city bonding exercise.
Okay, so that'd be separate and apart. The other question I have is, I know I've been to many of the meetings. I've spoken with you directly on numerous occasions. Never, ever been a big fan of eminent domain. I understand the value of it. Yeah, I understand the value of it, and I understand the intent. But just in my DNA, I don't believe in eminent domain, except for in those very limited circumstances where you have an individual that's allowing their property to go into disrepair or is harmful to the community and has no intention of doing anything to correct that. Barring that, I have a very, very strong knee-jerk reaction against eminent domain. Very happy to hear that no residential properties are targeted, because one of the comments we had at one of the meetings, I said, it's a very proud neighborhood. So I do have concern about commercial, and I know that we're hoping that the market will play itself out, private industry will prevail, and there'll be voluntary transfers of property. And I don't consider that eminent domain, I just consider that business, and that's great. My question is about redevelopment authority. Right now, they really can't do anything because they're not funded. However, once this plan is approved by us, approved by the mayor, goes to the state, gets approved by the state, the redevelopment authority then would have the authority to start to look at some of those parcels that are potentially targeted for acquisition, correct?
Correct.
And in the event that, and we say, and I'm glad to hear, eminent domain is always a means of last resort, in the event that they just can't come to an agreement, I don't think there's anything other than funding that can stop the redevelopment authority from acquiring land. I don't, if the redevelopment authority becomes funded, and I'm asking this question in your capacity of assistant city solicitor, if the redevelopment authority gets funded, they can now pursue their plan. And in the event that it's determined that eminent domain is necessary for a parcel, do they need to come to city government for authority? I don't think they do.
They don't.
So they can, as long as they're funded, they can do what they want to do.
That's correct.
And that's outside any jurisdiction of the city council.
Well, you're deputizing the ERA.
Correct.
To do that.
Correct.
That's
Separate body politic,
Yep.
and they can do what they want to do. But that's the concern I have. I don't know how many of my colleagues understand that concept, but once they're funded, they're off and running and they can do what they want to do. And the hope, at least for me, the hope is that you won't be grabbing commercial property from family, corporation, whatever it is, for the greater good. I understand it's for the greater good, but if someone has put sweat, equity, and time, generations into a business, The last thing in the world I'd want to see is for them to have that pulled out from under them. So that's my biggest concern. I think the general concept, the plan, excellent. It will improve the quality of life for not only the residents in the area, but for the city at large. My major concerns, I just want to make sure nobody loses their business if they don't want to make an arm's length transaction.
And it's, again, eminent domain is always the elephant in the room. But it should be noted, in addition to being a means of last resort, eminent domain is very expensive. It takes a lot of time. It includes relocation costs. It includes multiple appraisals. It includes approval from the state. It includes the retention of lawyers from probably on both sides. It's very expensive and it takes a very long time. There is no, from a financial aspect of it, there's no financial sense in going in and kicking in doors and starting with eminent domain. Unfortunately, sometimes it does become part of the strategic part from a buying and selling standpoint, and sometimes takings are friendly, sometimes takings are less than friendly for, like you said, those larger public purposes. Not necessarily for redevelopment. Sometimes they're used for roads, for road improvements, public infrastructure projects, and folks know this. So again, we hope for the best and we prepare to exercise any tool in the toolbox. But again, it's a means of last resort. And you're deputizing the ERA to execute this plan as written and use your powers that you have as part of the Constitution to do that. And eminent domain is, again, and Russ has been involved in it, Tony's been involved in it, I've been involved in it. It's really hard, and it takes a long time, and it's very expensive. There really isn't any economic sense in us pursuing that, unless we absolutely positively have to.
And I know that all three of you heard that word from me more than on one occasion. So, like I say, to the extent possible, I would really want to avoid that. And I know that once this is off and running and the redevelopment authority is funded, they run their own show.
That's the hope of everybody on this team, and the hope of the mayor and the direction that we had is do this. We want the market to control. We want things to happen transactionally, not legally, not from a legal perspective, and using legal maneuvering like eminent domain in order to do that. We want the market to control. We want the ERA to get in the game and do some things that we simply can't in terms of realizing the city's possible and potential economic future.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a couple more questions. Councilor Sani.
Thank you. What he just talked about eminent domain, is there any way we can word it in the urban renewal that you have to come in front of the council? There's no possible way we can add that wording? Because I know myself that I said that in support, I would not want to take anybody's property, eminent domain, if they've lived there a long time and they're keeping it up in a good, standing.
Well, if you look at the parcels that are included, and those are the only things that are targeted for acquisition could possibly, as that means of last resort, through that arduous, laborious, expensive process, be taken by eminent domain, and only what's been identified. It's not, we're not, and I know what the fear is. The fear is that we're going to start kicking down doors and kicking people out and saying, here's $100,000 for your $500,000 home, get out of here and go live in somewhere else. That's certainly not going to happen. This is not the West End. This is urban renewal planning has come light years from where it was, and the state has learned from their mistakes.
So we can't change the wording or add that wording in there then?
No, you can't.
Okay, that's the question. Thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Sachetta.
Regarding the same scenario, the question was if the redevelopment authority is funded, they can only be funded by the council. Is that correct?
Not only funded. They can be funded by the ERA. The city council can fund the ERA. That is not their exclusive source of revenue.
So if they came to us for $100,000, wouldn't they have to tell us what the $100,000 is for?
No.
In other words, they came to us.
However, to as a caveat to that point, they can only execute the plan that's in front of them. They can't do anything beyond that. They're executing the urban renewal plan. So you essentially know what the $100,000 will be used for.
I didn't understand what you just said.
We can only, Russ has been on the merry-go-round a couple times, so I'll let him.
I think the simple answer is, technically, they can come to the city and ask for funding and just ask for blanket funding. As a practical matter, I think the city council might want to know what it's for and in the course of the process. But as David said, all the redevelopment authority is authorized to do is what's shown on this plan. And when you look at it, when you consider the area that the urban renewal area boundary encompasses, the amount of properties that are on the acquisition list is quite small and very modest and very strategic. And the other thing I'll add in my own experience has been the power of the urban renewal plan. Unlike other plans, the private sector takes notice because this is where the city is starting to put skin in the game. And oftentimes, our experience has been, and we've even seen it here in the past year, is the private sector tends to seize on the opportunity and jumps ahead. In this case, we have to make an amendment to the plan as a result of the private-to-private transactions that have occurred. But in other communities, we've had instances where we're writing a plan, and 2 weeks later, we have to make changes because a private party has decided they saw what we put on the plan, and they're going to do it themselves. So that's something that I think the council should be aware of, that through the urban renewal plan, the city is putting skin in the game, and it really helps to make things happen. And I want to note Council President's concerns that he's expressed
Numerous
in previous
times.
meetings, and I do want to reiterate that the intent here is that eminent domain is, as David said, it's a messy process. It's nobody wins, but as you pointed out, there are instances that occur sometimes where a property owner is not taking care of their property, is not doing well by their tenants, be it commercial or residential tenants, and there comes a point where reason and good faith negotiation just becomes fruitless, and then you really have to strongly consider whether that's an option. And it's, again, not something that's done lightly or inexpensively.
And if you look at the parcels that have been identified for acquisition, you're not going to see any of those that are causing
Sure.
your apprehension to
Yep.
that.
So, just to make this clear, if the redevelopment authority comes to us and asks for money, we could ask what they want it for, and they don't have to answer, and
Absolutely.
we could refuse them.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
You
you.
have the power of appropriation in all matters.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Who's with the customary
Seeing none,
thanks?
let's do customary thanks. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate
And
your
a
time.
favorable recommendation to our next council meeting on May 26th.
It's been moved and second to refer the item favorably to our next meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You have so referred.
Make a motion to adjourn?
It's been moved and second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You have adjourned.